Hello, my friends. Welcome to Slow English Story. 500 years ago, a royal princess stepped out of a glittering palace, walked barefoot onto the scorching sands, and chose a flute-playing god over an entire empire. They tried to silence her with poison. They tried to break her with snakes. This is the raw, untamed story of Mirabai. Our story doesn't begin with a powerful queen, but with a little princess whose heart was completely captured by a vow that would shape her entire extraordinary life. Mirabai was born around 1498 into the Rajput clan, a really powerful royal family in Rajasthan. But from the get-go, her identity wasn't about being a princess. Nope. It was all about this one single, unshakable belief that the god Krishna was her true husband. So where did this incredible devotion come from? Legend points to a couple of key moments. First, when she was just a toddler, a holy man gave her a small idol of Krishna, and she basically never let it go. Then, a little later, she sees a big wedding parade and asks her mom, "Hey, who's my husband?" And her mother, maybe just kidding around, points to that little Krishna idol and says, "He is. Lord Krishna is your husband." And for little Mira, that wasn't a joke, was it? That was the absolute truth, and she held on to it for the rest of her life. The year was 1416, and the young princess faced her first massive turning point. Mirabai was given away in a high-stakes political marriage to Prince Bhoj Raj, the eldest son of the mighty ruler Rana Sanga of Mewar, based in the formidable fortress of Chittorgarh. For a regular royal bride, stepping into Mewar meant entering a world of immense wealth, absolute luxury, and extreme prestige. But for Mira, it was walking straight into a golden cage. The feudal court of Mewar operated under the strictest Rajput codes of conduct. Women of royal blood were expected to live behind the heavy veil of purdah, hidden away from the public eye. They were strictly required to worship the family's reigning deity, goddess Durga, and bow down to the rigid patriarchal hierarchy of the kingdom. But Mirabai did the unthinkable. She flatly refused to bow before Durga. She walked right out of the secluded women chambers, threw off her royal veil, and marched openly into public temples. There, surrounded by commoners, wandering mendicants, and holy sadhus, she sang, danced, and poured her heart out to her true lord, Krishna. To the royal family of Mewar, this wasn't just eccentric behavior. It was a devastating public insult, a direct threat to their honor, and a total violation of their ancient traditions. Then, just 5 years later, in 1421, her fragile shield completely shattered. Prince Bhoj Raj died from battle wounds, leaving Mira a young widow in a hostile palace that was already plotting her downfall. Following the brutal customs of the time, she was pressured to perform sati, expected to immolate herself on her husband's funeral pyre. But Mira steadfastly refused, declaring that her true, eternal husband, Lord Krishna, was immortal and could never die. Isolated and trapped inside the high fortress walls, she turned her grief into intense, ecstatic poetry. Every single day of her widowhood became an open act of defiance against the suffocating palace walls that sought to lock away her soul. Under the rule of her brother-in-law and the hostile royal court, the patience of the feudal lords completely ran out. They viewed her open defiance not just as a family embarrassment, but as a direct curse upon the dynasty that needed to be permanently erased. First, the royal court sent her a cup of deadly poison, disguised deceitfully as sacred temple water, or prasad. Without a single ounce of fear, Mira offered the cup to her beloved Lord Krishna, drank it down to the last drop, and miraculously transformed the lethal toxin into sweet nectar. Failing that, they tried a second deadly trap. They concealed a venomous viper inside a basket of fresh flowers, expecting it to strike her instantly when she reached inside to prey. But when Mira opened the basket, the fierce serpent vanished, leaving behind only a fragrant garland of fresh blossoms and a gleaming bronze idol. The persecution did not stop there, as the court subjected her to a third terrifying trial by forcing her to lie down on a bed made entirely of sharp iron spikes. Yet, through her absolute faith, the painful spikes softened instantly, transforming beneath her into a bed of soft, fragrant red rose petals. Completely isolated, emotionally drained, and hunted inside her own home, Mira turned outward for spiritual guidance. She wrote a desperate letter to the great Saint Tulsidas, asking if she should abandon her family entirely. The saint's response echoed back like a thunderclap. Abandon anyone, even your closest blood relatives, if they stand between you and the divine truth. That single, powerful message gave her the ultimate courage to break her golden chains forever. Having finally shattered the oppressive barriers of Chittorgarh, Mirabai stripped off every single piece of heavy royal jewelry, velvet clothing, and glittering gold ornaments. She stepped out onto the ancient, dusty roads of India, not as a conquered widow, but as a humble, barefoot, wandering mystic, embarking on a massive spiritual pilgrimage across northern and western India. Her historic departure was a revolutionary act of defiance against the deeply rooted caste and gender structures of 16th century feudal society. Upon arriving at a sacred temple town in Vrindavan, a famous and strict spiritual leader named Jiva Goswami initially refused to grant her an audience. His strict religious rule strictly barred women from entering his presence because he believed no female devotee could stand before his ascetic circle. But Mira delivered a legendary, razor-sharp response that instantly cracked his ego and exposed the illusion of spiritual superiority. She sent back a direct message asking, "Since when did Vrindavan have another man besides Lord Krishna? I always thought the only true man in this universe was Krishna, and everyone else here was simply a gopi serving him." Struck by her profound spiritual realization, the great scholar was instantly humbled, rushed out of his ashram, and bowed down to touch her feet in total submission. Years later, another incredible legend echoed across the plains of India, a tale that bridged the gap between divine devotion and imperial might. It is said that the formidable Mughal Emperor Akbar himself, accompanied by his master court musician Tanzan, disguised himself as a simple wandering mendicant. They traveled in absolute secrecy all the way to her remote forest sanctuary just to hear her divine voice echo through the night. Deeply moved by her soulful melodies, the emperor quietly left a priceless jade and emerald necklace at her feet as an offering of ultimate respect before slipping back into the dark night. Whether history remembers these moments as absolute facts or hagiographical lore, they capture the eternal truth. Mirabai was no longer bound by crowns, kings, or mortal empires. What truly anchors Mirabai deep inside the hearts of millions of people across India isn't just her survival against brutal poison or her daring escapes. It is the absolute soul-stirring power of her poetry, the legendary bhajans that she composed during her lifetime. While the elite scholars and royal courts of her time composed complex, rigid texts in academic Sanskrit, Mira made a revolutionary choice. She wrote and sang entirely in the common languages of the everyday people, using vibrant regional dialects like *Braj Bhasha and *Rajasthani. Because of this, farmers, housewives, wandering merchants, and common laborers could instantly understand, memorize, and sing her words without a single barrier. Her poetic style is globally recognized as *Madhurya Bhava*, the supreme spiritual concept of loving God not as a distant, terrifying ruler high up in the heavens, but as your most intimate, passionate, and divine beloved. Her verses are completely saturated with fierce passion, aching longing, agonizing pain, and explosive, pure joy. Now, as historical researchers and experts point out, her poetry path is also quite fascinating and complex. Over the centuries, thousands of devotional songs have been attributed to her name, though modern scholars believe only a couple of hundred are likely the genuine masterpieces written by Mira herself. Furthermore, the earliest written copies of her poems that we possess today didn't appear until roughly 150 years after her physical death. When you look at her ultimate legacy today across India and the entire world, multiple profound layers emerge. First, she is the eternal, universal symbol of fearless devotion, a woman who placed her spiritual truth above wealth, status, and life itself. Second, she stands as a monumental challenger of patriarchy, flatly refusing to accept the suffocating limitations placed on women by feudal society. Third, she was a true social rebel who ignored caste lines like they didn't even exist, treating a lower caste weaver like Sant Ravidas as her revered spiritual guru. Fourth, she is an immortal poet whose timeless songs have continued to echo across villages, classical concert halls, and modern cinema screens for over 5 centuries. And finally, she remains the ultimate enduring voice of divine love, reminding humanity that the soul's passionate, unbreakable bond with the divine transcends every earthly chain ever built. After a lifetime of walking barefoot across the vast plains of India, facing relentless persecution and scattering her divine poetry to the wind, Mirabai's incredible journey reached its final mystical chapter. Around 1547, while living out her remaining years in the holy coastal town of Dwarka, a breathtaking supernatural event reportedly took place inside the sacred temple of Ranchod. According to centuries-old hagiographical accounts, during a grand gathering of devotees and priests, Mira entered the inner sanctum of the temple while singing in supreme spiritual ecstasy. In front of hundreds of stunned witnesses, as her voice reached a soaring, heavenly pitch, her physical body slowly began to merge directly into the stone image of Lord Krishna. Her sari slowly draped over the idol, and before anyone could touch her, she vanished completely from the mortal world, leaving behind only her earthly garments wrapped around the divine form. Whether viewed as a historical mystery or a transcendent spiritual miracle, this legendary disappearance marked the ultimate union of the lover with her eternal beloved. Over the past 5 centuries, Mirabai's footprint on global culture, Indian cinema, classical music, and literature has expanded far beyond the borders of Rajasthan. Indian cinema, classical music, and literature has expanded far beyond the borders of Rajasthan. Thank you for joining us on this breathtaking voyage into the soul of India's most rebellious and beloved princess. If this story stirred something deep inside your heart, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and share this video with fellow history and culture lovers. Until next time, keep seeking your own inner truth and keep dancing to the music of your soul.